Now to ANC stalwart Mavuso Msimang, he's written an article in the Daily Maverick on Minister Lindiwe Sisulu's broadsides against the Constitution and the judiciary. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Msimang. You, like Sisulu, have a rich history with the ANC. Of course, Sisulu's the daughter of Walter Sisulu. You were on the military high command of eNCA. She too was part of Mkhonto Sizwe. Does her article and her writing style surprise you? I mean, you must know her well.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this. With what I've just listened to, two people who have commented in the same article, I feel it's almost like overkill. However, I do have a reason for having responded to what the minister had written. It struck me as not having been, with due respect, been written by herself. But that's really neither here nor there, because it's very difficult in many instances to follow the logic of what it says. You know, it talks about rule of law. It talks about that rule of law having existed both in a colonial state, in a Nazi state, and so on. And so what is its value? So you're not quite sure what point is being made. And unfortunately, this rule of law is not defined for a critic to understand better what it was meant. But in terms of ordinary language, it's extremely confusing. Then, of course, the language of, I think the very fact that the minister is privy to decision-making in the highest councils of the party and of the government, namely she's a member of cabinet. One would think that a lot of the issues that she is raising would primarily be raised in those councils, and only if there was failure to get receptivity would she then go out and address the public. But that carries with it the risk that if you're not happy with the response of your colleagues and you want to go to the public, you probably might even need to resign your position and so on. So I found it very difficult. I had read an article that she wrote in City Press, which I thought was very impressive on education. And when I saw this, I really was very confused.
So are you suggesting that it's a very different writing style and that perhaps someone penned it for her and she put her name to it perhaps for a specific reason?
No, I really wouldn't want to speculate on that. The styles, the quality of writing in the article I read yesterday day before in City Press, and the quality of this article here are really as different as night and day. Really, really very different. But you know, people do ask others to draft statements for them, and then they look at them and correct and so on. But yes, the writing style, quality of writing is very, very different. And the City Press one is admirably good. You know.
A lot of commentators are suggesting this could be her making a play, the beginnings of her making a play to stand up for the ANC presidency when, of course, the elective conference happens due in December this year. Do you think it's that?
It would be a very curious way of doing that. If she has really followed a very destructive route, because this attacks the very essence, the very principles of the ANC. It attacks the institutions of a state, in particular the judiciary. It shows a person who is not particularly subjecting herself to the discipline of the party. So I don't know how doing this would assist her in any way, unless people are saying she's speaking out against the evils of the party and she wants to reform this. But the question that was raised by the previous speaker here, the clip, clearly says, you can't raise these things now. How do you discover 21 years later that there are serious issues of poverty. We haven't seen any writing, we haven't seen any move to pass resolutions to deal with this problem. It's very curious indeed.
Minister in the Presidency, Mondli Gungubela, has condemned it. Do you think it requires action from President Cyril Ramaphosa? Or do you think it could essentially, even though it comes from a member of his cabinet, fall under free speech within the party? It's a broad church, we can criticize each other.
You know, how the president and the leadership, you must remember that the NEC is actually a collective of equals, of whom the president is the first. He's the first among these equals. All of them have a responsibility of looking at these kinds of issues and taking action to ensure that they are clarified and that a proper accounting for these kinds of utterances is given. It behooves them to do that. Ultimately, of course, the decision is the president's. President, both in her capacity as a minister in cabinet, and in her capacity as a member of the National Executive Council, she is obliged to respect certain protocols, certain codes of conduct. And if they are breached, I think they can't just be left like that. Surely there will be a requirement for accountability for this kind of action.
I think even in your article, you ask, what's this all about? I mean, you said to me that you don't think this is her sort of putting her hand up to say, I'll be part of the race for the ANC presidency towards the end of the year. So if it's possibly not that, what is going on? What could have motivated this article?
It's really difficult to say. I honestly find it very difficult to say. You know, when things are written in a manner that this article is written, where things are implied and names are not named of offenders, you're bound to think that there is an agenda of perhaps showing that I seriously disapprove with what's going on here. In that sense, perhaps one could argue that if I had my way, she must be saying, if I had my way, I'd be doing these things differently. I would change these things because they are not in order, they are not ANC, etc. So honestly, I do not know. I wouldn't go about it that way myself, because if I wanted to be president, I would have to be a president who is respected for being disciplined and for adhering to the values of the organization that you belong to.
All right,
that you
thank
want
you.
to lead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time this evening. ANC stalwart Mavuso Msimang there.